What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Wildcat Cave. We have a really fun episode today. It's more of a podcast style, and I brought on a special guest. I'm sure you guys have seen him on social media. He runs the YouTube channel for Kentucky Sports Radio. He was a great guy to talk to. We talked basketball, football, and everything in between. His name is Stephen Peake, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Let's go. All right, guys. Thanks for coming in, Stephen. We appreciate your time. And I'm sure what is a busy time of the year for you and over at KSR and stuff. So I appreciate you coming in, taking the time to talk a little bit of UK sports with us in a time that's not the most exciting.
Well, no, thanks for having me. I was just telling you that I watch your stuff every time it pops up on my newsfeed. I love your takes and love how you also you cover kind of what the media is talking about too. So you're kind of covering the team and the media, which I appreciate too. So no, I'm happy to talk to you today. And I don't think things are as bad as maybe people think. I would love to see what this team looks like when they get DJ back.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, and I appreciate those compliments. I think it'll be interesting to see a finally healthy team. There's 10 games left in the regular season, and we still haven't seen a full roster yet. But like I told you in prior, not in private, but just in our messages, it seems like at least on social media, you're one of the more outspoken, media members. You're not scared to kind of give the fans take more so than a filtered media take. Is that because you just fan harder than the rest of them, or you don't care about the backlash you get from guys, or why is that?
Well, I think that I'm the video guy, so I don't have to like really go in and mix it up with the players and coaches. I mean, I do some interviews with them, especially like after a game when we're just everybody's in kind of a huddle doing those interviews post game. But yeah, I mean, I grew up a fan, and it's too hard for me, especially in the middle of the games, to temper that and to because I when I even when I interviewed at KSR, I was like, I'm a fan, and like I'm not gonna hide it. KSR doesn't do that anyway. Everybody there is a fan. I think the other ones, the other guys that I work with have to be a little bit more professional, maybe, and that they are like the journalists covering the team. I know, like, but Jack and Zach and Drew, I mean, everybody there, they're all very opinionated. And actually, if you were to watch us on like the press row, we're like in that little well, like in the second level. Uh, we can be pretty animated as the game when the game's happening, and especially up in the press box at Kentucky games. You're not allowed to cheer, so there's always just like or everybody's acting like fans. And but I think that I think the reason I'm the more outspoken is because I have terrible takes, and I'm just not afraid to put them out there, um, because I will freely admit. I mean, I played basketball. I coached like an eighth grade team, so I don't know. I don't even try to pretend to know the game. Like, people who are hired to know the game are. I'm hired for video and stuff like that. So I think that's also why. And I just can't control my emotions most of the time. That's mostly what it is.
I think that's a lot of us, Big Blue Nation. I've said from the time I started this channel that this was never meant to be an X's and O show. I played football growing up, not basketball. I'm just a fan. So the whole point of this channel is to be a fan's take on the team, a basketball Benny, if you will. So I'm right there with you. I've jokingly applied for media credentials, and that's probably one of the reasons I keep getting denied is because I couldn't contain myself.
There are times when I'm like, you're definitely not supposed to cheer. And before I was at KSR, actually, I was photographer at WHS 11 here in Louisville, and I would shoot the Kentucky games. And so I was right there on the baseline. And there was, I can't remember which game it was, but it was a terrible call, and it happened right in front of me. And like, you can see it in the video. I'm like pointing at like, how do you call that? And like, the ref is right. You can't do that. But I've kind of learned there to like try to keep at least during the game. And that's probably why I tend to go to Twitter, because I can't really react, out loud at the games, which is, it is something I had to, when you watch a game with like my family, it's intense. Like everybody is just, it means so much to us. I've thought that it is a little irrational to get this high or this low on the performances of 18 to 22-year-olds that we really don't know. Like their successes and failures determine how I'm going to feel that week. It's definitely irrational. But it's just that's sports. I'm so interested in like the psychology of sports fans and like the what it does to us mentally, even like people who are fans of successful teams have a greater acceptance of their own mortality. So it
Right.
literally is life and death,
It
which
really
is
is. I mean, and obviously you know this just as well as I do that growing up in Kentucky, this is what we live, eat, sleep, breathe.
yes.
Even my earliest memory. I don't know how old you are. I'm 28. My earliest memory is watching Patrick Sparks. I think against Florida, shoot a three, and they debated whether his foot was on the line or not. And that was I remember, however old I was, whatever year that was, that just being such a big deal to me, whether they gave him that 3 point or not. Obviously, no sports teams. I'm from Northern Kentucky, so the closest thing I had was the Bengals. And then once I started watching college sports, it was Kentucky or nothing basically.
Yeah, was that Michigan State 2005 Elite Eight game? I know Sparks, he hit the three and it bounced around the rim and it went in. They go to double overtime, they lose. It was on Easter Sunday. So my rabbit died. We got home from my watching the game. We got the rabbit on Easter, and then it died on Easter several years later. But it was
Oh
like,
my
yeah, I just
goodness.
remember that whole Monday morning, just like feeling sick. Um, and like I'm 32, so I was,
Okay.
no, I'm not. I'm 33. Wow. Closer to 34 actually. My birthday's in March. So, but I remember that if that's the game we're talking about in 2005, and Tubby Smith's last like chance, really, it ended up being at a Final Four, and I thought they had it. They were about four in the second overtime, I think, and they had the rebound, and Ravi Moss and Randolph Morris kind of bump into each other, and it gets knocked out to the wing, and the guy from Michigan State hits a three, and it goes right back down to one. And I remember waking up that morning, like reading the newspaper, getting ready for school, and just feeling like I don't even want to go into school. I live in Louisville. A lot of my friends are Louisville fans, and I'm like, I don't want to go in today. I don't want to talk about it because Louisville did go to the Final Four,
Right.
and so yeah, that was just that made it even worse. I think one of the things that Cal has benefited from through all of this, and that Tubby didn't, was that Louisville has been kind of bad
Yes.
in these last 4 years, because that was kind of the problem with Tubby. Also, not only weren't going to Final Fours and weren't winning championships, but Louisville was, so that made it way worse.
Right, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but you're right. Cal, I couldn't imagine the last 4 years had Louisville been what they
Mm.
were previously with Rick there. Even before, going to Final Fours and stuff. While we're 9-16 and whatever, but we'll start kind of macro here, and we'll work our way into the specifics. So we're 5-4 in the SEC. Obviously, Vanderbilt tonight on the road. We have losses to A&M, South Carolina, Florida, and Tennessee. We've had back-to-back home losses 8 times in our history, 3 times in the last 4 years. So just in the macro, how do you describe the state of where UK basketball is today?
Well, this team, this is what sucks, man, because I love this team that they have. I like all the guys are likable. Um, Rob Dillingham is most likely going to be a star in the NBA. I mean,
Yes.
he's got uh, maybe it'd be better if he was a little taller. Maybe he should play better defense. But I mean, you can just see like he's going to be a star in the NBA. Like, just people are going to love watching him play. I love watching him play right now, and he's not anywhere near his peak yet. Um, that's kind of what sucks, and everybody that this team is kind of getting the pressure of like the lack of success for the last, lack of Kentucky success. There's a lot of teams that would have loved to have been a 6 seed last year,
Yep.
but at Kentucky, like when you see Kansas go to six or get 6 1 seeds in the last 8 years, and you've gotten zero, well, the pressure starts to build to like have this magical season, and we've kind of put it off to this year. Like We have the T-shirt, the DJ Aaron. We have the T-shirt. Those were the guys. When those guys get here, we're back. And it looked like that was going to be the case. When I was in Toronto, I thought like, oh my gosh, we got a completely different offense. Yeah. We actually have stars, because that's kind of we've had these one and dones, but Case and Wallace is not John Wall or Brandon Knight, and Ty is not that. And so you're getting guys who are going. Ashton Higgins was, I guess, a 2 and done, but like Brandon Boston, like they're fine. I mean, really good players, but like that's not the same caliber of the one and done. So you're not really getting that 30 win season, or putting up all these numbers, or the exciting play that the early one and dones were giving you, and then they're gone. So all this pressure kind of is mounted on this team. And there was, I thought, a lot of forgiveness for those first 2 losses.
There was definitely, especially, I mean, obviously the Kansas loss, we're always terrible in the Champions Classic. But, they had Hunter Dickinson. They were number 1. And then we didn't play terrible against them. Showed signs that once we get 7-footers, we could have a defense that's admirable, or at least decent. And then the loss after that was at Wilmington after that, the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And
How did you feel after that loss?
I definitely wasn't ready to give up. Obviously,
right.
It's a hard place to be as a Kentucky fan, as we all know, teams that lose against mid-majors at home typically don't go on runs. But then we turn around and beat UNC, and we're back on top of the world. We beat Miami, who at the time we thought was really good. So it hurt. It was somewhat unexplainable. But overall, I still thought, and kind of do still think, that the everything's still in front of us, and we can make a run, but we're definitely not making it easy on ourselves.
No, and that's the thing with the 1 seeds. I mean, there's a lot more parity in college basketball. I think the Final Four showed us that last year. FAU, SDSU, Miami, and then there was UConn. But if you look at if you want to look at it for the last, since the Cal era, everybody who's won the NCAA title, here's who's won it: a 1 seed, a 2 seed on a buzzer beater, beating a 1 seed, that being Villanova, and then UConn has won it as a 7 seed and a 4 seed twice. That's so it's only 4 times has it not been a 1 seed. So typically it is. And if you look at the last 32 national championships, I think 34 1 seeds have been represented in those 32 championships. So basically it's saying you gotta be able to be a 1 seed to have a real shot. So to not have one, and having to play when you got to play Kansas, you got to play a 3 seed in the second round. I mean, now you got to beat 5 really good teams, 5 great teams, to win it all. And so now that's kind of where you're going to be back to this year. And I'm absolutely not ready to count this team out. They're too good. This team really should be battling for the SEC title, which we've only won once in the last 7 years. And I hate that we have all these doom stats that are now coming out, because we used to do this to Louisville. We used to point out their deficiencies, and we used to do this with Tennessee. And now we're doing it to ourselves to kind of be all right, things are good, but they're not great. And to go to the state of Kentucky basketball again, when Tubby Smith, at the end of his last 2 years, it was just clear we just didn't have the players, right? I mean, Sheree Thomas, Bobby Perry, fine, but they're not they were never going to win you a title. You could just look at the caliber of player that you had coming in and go all right, it's not going to get better next year. That's what makes this so different. And because you don't really know, okay, who else are we going to get? We got the number 1 recruiting class. Should what changes need to be made? Who do you bring in that would get the talent that you got lined up to come in 2024 and 2025?
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at. That it's I think that with Tubby, even we all love Tubby now, but in the last 2 years, it was rough. I mean, there were for sale signs being put in his front yard. Terrible. I mean, I'm not saying anybody should be doing that to Cal's house or any. I mean, but I'm just saying that it was bad. But it was also we could look on Rivals and Scout and see, and look at the players he had coming in during that time and be like, well, this is obvious. Like we're not going to be good in 2009. Why would we? So we were like, we got to go get Billy G. That'll save us.
That turned out great, right?
Yeah,
So Patterns,
he
what,
did
good,
sign.
great, junk?
He did get Patterson. He did like immediately sign Patrick. So we're like, oh, there we go. Now we got the guy who is
One
devoted to
SEC Coach of
basketball.
the Year.
Yeah, yeah,
Amazingly.
yeah. You're right. Yeah.
But you
Wow.
touched on two things I kind of want to mention. Number one being the doomsday stats that you see out there quite a bit. There's the ones you mentioned, obviously the one that says you have to be top 20 offense and defense to win. To me, I kind of look at those like you see the sign next to a roulette wheel that tells you the numbers it's hit, and it
Yeah.
influences how you bet. Because none of those stats impact what happens in the tournament this year. However, I'm still going to bet black if it's all red. You know what I mean? So while everything is an isolated experience, history does play a factor, especially into how people think
Mhm.
and bet, and maybe to some extent outcomes. And then the second point you mentioned is the parity in college basketball. There's no doubt that the SEC is better now than it has been. You said we haven't won, the regular season since 2017, the tournament since 2018, and then, is that to blame for Kentucky's struggles? Is the parity? Or is it just the fact that we're not as good? Because you can look at it either way. You can say everybody's better now. Of course, we're not going to win as much. Or you can
Mhm.
compare us to Duke and North Carolina and Michigan State and UCLA, who've all made a Final Four since Kentucky has.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely more parity. It's definitely a factor. I also don't think we're as good. I mean, as I mentioned, the guys who are one and dones, and Casey Wallace is an amazing kid, and he's doing fine. When he was at Kentucky, he wasn't like these guys just weren't that. They weren't like you're going to get one and dones if you're going to rely on freshmen. Like they got to be like John Wall, like they got to be
Right.
Brandon Knight, and they got to. I mean, they got to be Tyler Eulis. Like and this is the closest we've had to that. That's why I thought that this year would be different because I think there is parity. I also think if you switch Alabama with the name Kentucky, it looks just like it's always looked. They are 27-3, I think, in the last 2 years now in the SEC. They went 16-2 last year and ran through. So really, it's just like you got to be able to put together a team like Alabama has been able to do. And
Right.
so there is parity, but when you look, the teams who are at the top are still only losing right now, like 1 or 2 games. So like, again, I mean, there is more parity. I think there's teams that are investing in basketball in the SEC that maybe weren't investing in basketball as much a decade ago. And some of the early teams that, didn't lose a home game in the SEC or, took only a couple losses. They weren't really going up against. They would have taken more losses this year. I guess that's the short answer. Like John Wall's team, they only played 16 games then, so I think they were like 14-2. Maybe they go, 12-4 and win the SEC at 12-4. Like maybe that's what happened. Even like the really good teams, maybe just take another couple losses.
Right. So
But
maybe the old, or what is now 15-3 or 16-2 is now 14-4, and you get the same results with a few more losses.
mhm,
But I think that that's kind of a point that gets lost on a big portion of at least the online fan base. There's
yeah,
nuance to numbers, and you either take, it seems like people take one stance versus the other, and
yeah,
they're not willing to see the middle ground of two things can be true at the same time. We have all the talent in the world and we can be a Final Four team, or our defense is terrible and we'll let a mid-major put up 105 on us and then be out in the round of 32.
yeah. I mean, that seems, and there is nuance in this, like you just said. And it does seem like people want to take like one stance and they want to argue that one stance that like we're Kentucky, we should never lose a game ever. I mean, the 38-1 thing is people don't understand like that is insane that they didn't lose a game in the regular season.
Yeah.
Like it's insane. It shouldn't that was never 2014, 2015, either of those years, never my expectation to go 40-0. Like it's an insane thing to think in a power conference that with all the scouting reports that are shared and having to play a team twice or three times even, that just doesn't happen. We're never going to see that again. We will never see that.
And there's randomness in college basketball, and there was randomness in that year. I mean, how many overtime games did that 2015 team go to where a missed shot or a
Ole
free
Miss beat
throw?
them.
Yeah. And then, the ball bounces your way sometimes. But the problem, it seems like, is the ball just doesn't bounce Kentucky's way since COVID.
Did you see that stat? I don't know if you saw, I think Wildcat's tongue put out a stat, a chart that showed like
Yes.
all the luck I don't know if you call them luck. I mean, if you want to call it luck, it's luck in both ways. Like they had a lot of good luck early on and then not so much. I mean, if Van Fleet makes that shot in 2014, what's the tweak? We
Right.
never hear about it because like, oh, great tweak. They got beat in the round of 32, but he didn't. And Aaron Harrison made those shots. And so 2014 is a great year. It's a game of misses and makes, right? I mean,
Right.
if
it doesn't, and in my opinion, if any of those shots go the other way for good or bad, that doesn't make Kentucky or Cal or those players any better or worse. At some point, you just make shots or you just miss shots, and that's how we judge history, I guess.
Yeah, I think
it's
I saw
such a fine edged thing.
The last 5 NCAA tournament losses, and if we want to go 6 of the last 7, Kentucky's had the lead with like 4 minutes to play or under 4 minutes to play.
Right.
So like if you pull out a couple of those, it doesn't even matter which ones we're talking about. Like the way we look at Calipari is different. I think we have to admit that parity is definitely to blame. When I go back and I look at Mike Krzyzewski got to just ride off into the sunset when really you want to like look at somebody. If Calipari's Kentucky teams win in 2010 and 2015, like they should have, or if Kansas wins in 2010, they were the overall number 1 seed. If those things happen, right? Or if I've always thought, man, if Kentucky could have got Duke in the Final Four instead of Wisconsin, even like I would have preferred that. Or if Wisconsin and Duke had to play each other, and Kentucky got Michigan State, because I really like Kentucky's matchup against Duke. But if Kentucky would have won that game, you start looking at Coach K different, don't you? Like all just because the ball bounced and it all lined up. But if you look at 2016, he got beat, I think, in the Sweet 16 to a team he shouldn't have lost to. I think the year after that, he gets beat by South Carolina in the round of 32. Goes 13 and 11 during COVID. I think that's the worst, and at least since he's been there, the worst record that Duke has had. Then he loses to his arch rival on the way out in the Final Four. They were an 8 seed. They struggled all year, and I know they're in the Final Four, so they're good. But like that's how and he just gets to ride on the sunset. And Calipari has a similar, but the ball just didn't bounce his way in the last few years, and that's the whole story. Like the Auburn game, if Auburn misses one more shot, if Keldon Johnson scores there, or PJ scores there, and he goes to the Final Four. It's just the ball is not bouncing their way there, and then you have St. Peter's. You have a disappointing season last year, and now it's like, oh, we're going to be like a 6 seed again. So I don't know. I do think sometimes it's unfair how we judge coaches because it does come down to players making plays.
It does, but 2 things. Number 1, if Kentucky wins the championship in 2015, do we look at Calipari different if 16 to now is still the same results?
I think he would have left.
You think? Well, let's assume he stays and then has the same result.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because if he has 2 titles and he's got a 40-0 team, I mean, there is a limit. Like he can't. That's the thing too. It hasn't been outside of the COVID season, which I'm ambivalent on how I feel about that. Like, something was different. I mean, Duke went 13 and 11 also, so there was something weird about it. But if you outside of that, it hasn't been like so bad that you would even consider like we should get somebody else. I think that's where I would be, because the 2022 team was good and they got beat by St. Peter's. And again, going back to Coach K, like he he lost to Mercer and Lehigh. So his run 2012, he gets beat by Lehigh. 2013, he gets beat by 22 to Louisville in the Elite Eight, then loses to Mercer the following year.
That's a
I mean,
tough
could you
stretch.
imagine? Could you imagine if Calipari went through that? If we lost to a 15, got beat, let's say by I don't know who's the Louisville equivalent to them. I don't know, but they get beat by
Yeah.
22 in the Elite Eight, and then they get beat by a 15 again. Oh my God! I mean, Calipari would have for sale signs in his front yard. I mean, he just like that's where it would be.
Right.
And like again, it just comes down to I think a lot of times like the tournament is so lucky. That's why I don't hold Cal. I don't get so mad that he's only won one title. It's I mean that team just beat everybody. Like they didn't ever really. It's outside of Louisville. I don't feel like it ever came down to like a last, oh, we need a bucket here, because they just had a pretty sizable lead. I felt like through most of the tournament, but how did can I ask you a question? Is
Sure.
that all
Yeah.
right?
Of course.
There's obviously been somewhat of a fall off, and I think like what should fans' expectations be? We've moved the goalpost a little bit, but if you were like if you spoke for the whole fan base, where does this what do you need to see from this team? Because I'm kind of trying to figure out where everybody's at too. Uh,
It's hard to
what do you need to
say.
see?
My standard is and always has been Elite Eight for Kentucky. Of course, there's years you come up short, but then you make those up with Final Fours and championships. We average about one championship every 10 years historically, and even that number is a little
Mm-hmm.
skewed, with 48, 49, 51, and 58 being so close together. And then, of course, 96 and 98. But if you look at the macro, Cal technically still has, another 7 years to win a championship to keep that pace. But I think people in Kentucky might not be, alone in this, but programs like Kentucky, when you're judging a coach or a program, it's so much of a "what have you done for me lately" mindset. And like I said, that may be Kentucky more so than anybody for sure, but maybe just blue bloods in general. But yeah, my standard's always been Elite Eight. And I thought that I for sure had a team this year that would meet that standard or exceed it. And now it's getting a little more dicey.
Yeah, and I like how you put it at the Elite Eight, because I've always thought if you were down to 8 teams at this point, it's kind of a crapshoot.
It is.
Like we
Any
talked
team
about.
in the Elite Eight, in theory, unless given the Cinderella runs, any team in the Elite Eight can win the championship, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
obviously even more true in the Final Four. If you get to a Final Four, it's not a championship. We don't do moral victories, but that's a pretty damn good year.
Oh, absolutely. If this team were to make a Final Four, if we were able to see that Final Four floor again, a lot gets forgiven. I'll even say there's a lot that gets forgiven if they win the SEC tournament, which something we haven't experienced since 2018, which was something we were experiencing. I mean, like, regardless, when this is over, and it's going to end one day, and Calipari's not going to be the coach anymore, people are going to look back and talk about how great this was. Because it was so great. And I'm hoping, like, let's give us like, Rupp went to that championship game, I think in 66. And that was like, all right, he made it back, and it would be nice to get to a Final Four and have that, like, be it, whether it's the last season, maybe he comes back, but it's at least like, okay, there's at least that another banner goes up in the rafters on his way out. But yeah, we're going to look back at this and just be like, how freaking fun was all of that from probably 2010 to I'll stretch it out to 2019, to the Tyler Hero team. And, being another overtime loss in the tournament, the overtime losses in the last second shots. And they're just, ugh.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I would love to see if we're nearing the end of Cal and his era here. There would be nothing better. He was hired my 8th grade year, so he's been the coach most of my life. I really don't remember a ton of the Patino years, spot memories of Tubby, and then I blacked out the Billy Gillespie years. So Cal's been my coach. I would love to have a good ending to the story that's kind of fallen off a little bit. But one of the biggest problems, and I know I've seen you post a lot about this on Twitter or X. Why is our defense so bad? It seems like, at least in my opinion, your biggest complaint would be the blob plays or the baseline out of bounds.
Oof.
Why,
That's
number
yeah.
one, I understand why it bugs you so bad, but you can explain it. And then number two, we're giving up 85 points in the SEC per game. Can we improve? Is it possible? I've seen a lot of people on both sides of that argument. What do you think? Is it possible to fix and then make a run?
I get the benefit of having Brandon Ramsey's number. And so I just throughout the game, I'm just texting him like, bro, why are we giving up? Why are guys wide open? And he's pretty good. He's a college basketball consultant, and he coached. I mean, he'll always downplay what he coached college basketball. I don't Division 2 or Division 3, but he does know what he's talking about. I mean, I would love to think, and I do, and I love Brandon. I would love to think the guys on the bench at Kentucky who are getting paid as much as they know it better, and they should, and they probably do. But I know from talking to Brandon that uh, for one, the baseline out of bounds plays, they lost the game to Georgia during COVID on a baseline out of bounds play. Like in the final seconds of the game, guy slips wide open to the basket and wins the game. That would have been it for me if I was the head coach. No more like we're doing it something different. A lot of teams like to try zone. Some teams go 1-3-1. Some teams pack in a 2-3. When I was, gosh, this sounds so stupid to say. When I was coaching, this was an 8th grade basketball team. So, but we would pack it into a 2-3, and that's not. I don't even know why I'm comparing the level. It's totally different. But it does. Other teams do it, and it would at least stop the guy going right down the middle of the lane for a dunk, like we saw a few times. I mean, if you take out the baseline out of bounds plays, what did we lose by? 11. I think they got 10 points off of
Yeah,
them.
Tennessee.
So yeah, Tennessee did. That's like I have heard that there was some work on some zone defense, and I don't think that if they're bad defenders, like as Brandon Ramsey would say, they're not going to be suddenly good defenders by going zone. But
And
at
I don't think a
least
team that gives up open threes and man, I don't know that a zone is fixing that because I think it's going to lead to more open threes. But at this
it
point, it
could,
can't get
yeah.
much worse. And if it does anything to throw the other team out of rhythm, then I'm all for trying anything. And I think even Cal made a comment this week of, well, maybe not this week, last week, that they were working on some zone schemes.
hmm I would be throwing everything at the wall and
Yeah,
seeing what works. I mean, I'd throw in a press. I mean, you can't really do that with DJ Wagner out because you just can't run guys,
play
ragged.
a
But
box of
like
one.
I'd just try it all. Try a box of one. Let's go 1-3-1 half court trap. Let's go 3-2. I mean that you're giving up that many points anyways. What does it hurt? At least maybe make the point guard when he brings the ball across half court, be like, oh, what are they in? And look to his coach and get the, whatever they got to do. Or if they go, oh, they're in 2-3, let's get into a 1-3-1 or whatever that they do. But at least like it was hard. It's hard. It's been difficult to just watch guys get just beat off the dribble and it leads to either a wide open three on a kick out or just a straight line drive to the basket. And just what's the strategy there? Just be better. Like that can't
And
be.
it just,
Sorry, go ahead.
to me, it just doesn't make sense how you have DJ Wagner and Reed and Rob and even Antonio this year who are beating guys off the dribble. It doesn't matter who they're playing. There's not been a guy yet stay in front of them effectively. But on the defensive end, we can't move. I watched against Florida, a guy, the Clayton guy, caught the ball at the 3-point line. Reed is 15 foot away from him, and the
Yeah.
dude blows by him towards the basket, and Reed doesn't move his feet or even turn around as he goes by. I don't understand how we can be such elite athletes, the top 20 recruits that we talked about, and then the most athletic team you could dream of for Calipari, and then not be able to stay in front of you or I out there.
Yeah, it is. I talk about that with people all the time. Like it's not like this is just a bunch of like YMCA players. They're super athletic, right? I mean, like they have the quickness. Rob has the shifts. Like, I mean, we can't stay in front of somebody. or we can't improve. Like when you watch, I mean, some of our guys, like their hips open up as soon as the dribble, like they put the dribble down. We're like, well, we're playing Matador defense here. Like we're just olaying them. And sometimes you want to force some baseline because you use the out of bounds as an extra defender, right? I mean,
Right.
I know this is basic stuff, but like I watched them not be able to cut off the baseline. So the guy just goes all the way around and lays it up and in. We're going through film from the Texas A&M game for one of our shows. And it was like, man, how do you not fix that? Like, how is it happening over and over and over? Like, how are we not, hey, call timeout, Trey, just put your foot on the baseline, make him go back to the middle. Like, because this strategy is not working. It's like, is it strategy? Are guys not doing what they're being told?
Well, would you
I know
say
they're working on it.
I find it hard to believe that it's an ability thing, that these guys don't have the ability or the quickness or the side to side speed to stay in front of their man. And then you have Cal and other coaches, and then even Rob Dillingham say that it's an effort issue. So where does the real answer lie? Is it these guys aren't trying on defense? Because I find that hard to believe as well.
Yeah.
And I also don't believe that it's an ability thing.
Yeah, that's what makes it so maybe even hard to solve for the coaching staff. Like, what is it? And I think a little bit of it too is how basketball has evolved. Like, team Cal's defense did work well when you had a shot blocker, and now we do have some 7-footers that can play. But maybe just everything being so spaced out and having to guard 4s and 5s who shoot 3s, because typically you could just play off, right? Well, you can't do that anymore. You got to go out and guard. You got to at least respect. And I'll notice too, sometimes it's like, is this we're not reading scouting reports? Which I know that can't be true, but we're guarding guys who are 21% 3-point shooters who never shoot threes, and we're guarding them beyond the 3-point line. And they know what they do? They go right around us. They kick it out to a guy who shoots 41% and shoots a lot of threes. I'm using a UNCW and have one in my head of like specifically like that's what happened. But this happens a lot. We're running at shooters who don't shoot, like with running at them so that they go right around us. Well, if you know that guy shoots less than 30% from 3, and sometimes it just does seem like, why is a guy who's shooting 22% now shooting 40% against us today? But you're leaving the guy who shoots a better percentage for a guy who not only doesn't shoot a high percentage, doesn't even shoot a lot of threes. So like, is that part of it? I know they have a scouting report. I know they go over it, but is it just like, there could just be a lot going on? I mean, the game happens fast, and it doesn't slow down, I think, for some guys until for some of these like super talented freshmen, it slows down right about this time. It starts to like, oh, okay. Like, all right, I'm able to take in all the information and I'm able to, show it on the floor. And that's been the formula, right? It's just that like we could eke out wins while learning. We were so talented in the past that like you could play a terrible game against Ole Miss where they got you beat. They did. Like A&M, Trey Lyles had to hit 2 free throws in overtime, I think, to force it to a double overtime, or they lose. How about I point out John Wall all the time. Let's look at like the early on of when he started there, right? He had to hit 2 free throws to force Stanford into a overtime in a ballroom. He had to hit a game winner against Miami of Ohio. So like they've been so good at eking out these wins, and lately though they're losing. Like they're losing to Evansville, they're losing to South Carolina, and they're losing to UNCW. So like I do think that when the game slows down for these freshmen, like maybe some of the defensive issues will start to resolve themselves. But I'm happy to hear that there's at least some adjustment into like strategy too. So when you watch it, do you want to pull your hair out when you see like they're just beating us on the same play every time?
Absolutely. And it's hard to explain away, are guys just shooting nuclear against us because it's Kentucky, or are they doing it because they have wide open looks? And again, there's stats you can find to prove either. I've always believed teams play out of their mind against us, but that's also with the assumption that Cal is typically a good defensive coach and our teams are typically good defensive teams. But this team, I think it leans more towards they're just open, and these are Division I basketball players.
All these guys can shoot now.
Yes.
Like, and that's kind of what I was saying too. Like, you watch guys warm up before. I mean, Daniel Orton was never going to hit a three. I mean, like, but now every Oscar Tshiebwe could shoot what was a three back in like, 05, 06 before they moved it back. Like he's hitting that shot. Like everybody can shoot. So
Yep.
it does make defense like insanely hard. Like I look at our bigs, every single one of our bigs can hit a jump shot. I mean, all four of them can hit a three. Ugana hasn't hit one yet, and maybe Cal won't let him, but he shot
Maybe
one and it didn't
tonight.
look that bad. Yeah.
Maybe he'll get the
So
look tonight.
yeah, maybe if there was going to be a night, maybe it would be today. But yeah, the defense is it's been bad. It's been bad. Even last year was bad. And we were watching tape we were doing one of our shows, and we were going over the Kansas State game, and it was the same play for Noel over and over and over. And it was like, how do you watch this on the sideline and not do anything? It would drive me crazy, especially somebody who wants to win as bad as Cal wants to win. Because all this stuff that he doesn't care about winning and he only cares about getting out of the NBA is BS. Like he wants to win.
Complete nonsense. And oddly enough, that this channel has an older fan base. So that's something I hear quite a bit. Even today, yesterday, ever since the Tennessee loss, I've had a bunch of people comment on posts or videos and say, "Are you ready to fire Cal yet?" So I'll ask you that question. One NCAA tournament in 3 seasons, one SEC tournament win. Number one, is this the most critical March in Calipari's
Yes.
tenure? And if it goes south, obviously he won't be fired, but does it become so unbearable that he just doesn't want to be here anymore?
I think that would be it. I think it would be that it's just like, because this can't be fun. I mean, right now, because this was supposed to be the fun year, and it hasn't been. And there's going to be so much pressure. Not that I want him to leave, because again, I don't really have like who you gonna, it's who you gonna get. And there are names out there. And I think what sucks so much, this is what sucks, man, is that whoever you get to replace Cal, you'll never be, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we're ever going to be as cool like as we
Definitely
were.
not with Scott Drew.
No,
Scott Drew
at the end
doesn't
of the
scream
day,
cool to me.
at the end of the day, like you just want to win, right? Like, so all that extra stuff doesn't really matter. But man, wasn't it? I mean, you talk about you were in 8th grade. I mean, how cool was it? So I assume, like, do you go to school with like Cincinnati fans or like Xavier? So like,
Yeah,
how
I
cool
mean,
was it? Like, we got Drake at our games.
It's Cincinnati or Kentucky, obviously. Maybe you sprinkle in a Xavier or the random Kansas or whoever, but it's predominantly Kentucky and then Cincinnati.
So I just imagine, like, you're going to school, like we got Drake coming to our games, like we got celebrities. I mean, once guys start getting drafted and they're like, John Wall's on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I mean, I don't know that it'll ever be like that again, and that's what kind of makes me sad, is that who was at the game? Tracy McGrady and somebody else was there this past game. But
everybody,
you just like, and like that's having John Calipari was the rock star coach to go with the rock star program. And there's not really the rock stars are getting out of the game. Like, I don't know who's the young, like, but Rick Pitino, he was like 36, I think, when he coached at Kentucky, when he started 36.
I'll say there's an answer. There's an answer that I wouldn't want, but there is a name out there that would at least fit a similar bill, and it's Nate Oates.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that if there was, I want to see what Alabama can ever do in the tournament.
Yeah.
I went to their game here in Louisville.
He's definitely not the guy to hire. And I think with all of the Brandon Miller stuff and not a proven success track record.
Oh yeah. I forgot
he's
about
never
that.
going to be the guy. As long as Mitch Barnhart's here, he's not the guy. But even, take Louisville, for example, all of the names that's being thrown around at Louisville right now, I can't believe, but then I think there's no one else that's going to take that job. Mick Cronin doesn't get me excited if I'm Louisville. Eric Musselman sure doesn't.
Mm-mm.
Whoever else they're throwing, there's just not that hot young name like there was when Cal or Rick or maybe Tubby to some extent when they first came in.
Yeah, and I mean Billy Donovan was. I feel like when we did this the last time, um, that there was there were a few names that and I feel like I keep hearing the same names like Jay Wright. Why? I mean, yeah.
All right, I guess his camera. He told me before we started that his camera might die, so he'll be back in a second. He has a backup battery. But yeah, like we were saying, just this is a do or die season for Cal. It's the most critical March run, and it's not fair to the team this year. It's these guys, like he mentioned, have a there he is. All
Sorry
good.
about that.
No, you're good. But I was just saying that, like you mentioned earlier, this is easily the most critical March for Cal because of the past couple seasons, the missing the tournament, and then St. Peter's, and then Kansas State last year. But and so Cal's going to have all this pressure on him. He's kind of known for having his teams tight in the first couple rounds anyway. And now, to no fault of their own, these teams by proxy are going to have the world on their shoulders in the first maybe 3 rounds of the tournament, and it's not fair to them. But if it doesn't go well, they and Cal are catching all of the blame for the past 4 seasons.
Yeah, that's what's gonna suck. I don't like. Uh, I don't know. One of the reasons that I felt like we're showing all this frustration as a fan base, and it's like, all right, maybe we should tone it down just a little, only because it's not this team. It's not. It's not like we're frustrated with like just specifically this team. Like I do think this team should be better, but like it's the culmination of the last few years and of feeling like it's slipping. Like you know, uh, I don't think we're anywhere close to Indiana. I do find. How would you like to be Indiana? The school that everyone's like, we don't want to be them. Even Louisville, who's only won like 11 games in 2 years, is like, gosh, I hope we don't become Indiana. Like
Yeah,
you've won
that's a
11 games in
miserable
2 years.
existence for a program that was such a storied top 5 program for a long time. That's a fall from grace if I've ever seen one. So realistically, Steven, what can't number one, what's your percentage chance that Kentucky wins the regular season, SEC, and then the tournament?
Oof. Okay. The regular season SEC.
Yes.
I think that barring something crazy happening and other teams, because now you just got to hope a lot of teams lose. I think there's what 9 SEC games left,
Yeah,
or
9 SEC games left. And then the
and
SEC Big Ten or whatever ACC challenge.
so I would put that at like 5 to 10%. I mean, there's just at this point like that loss to Florida really hurt. I mean, as far as your chances of winning the SEC, which is that uh, that is kind of weird to me. We don't really take a lot of pride in at winning the SEC outright, and that should be
Right.
like one of the things. Like there should be like 3 things every season that we're trying to do, and if you can hit on one of them, then success. Like I'll be willing to put a check mark. I mean, 2018 they lost 8 SEC games, 8. Tubby only lost 7, and he was like, "I got to go." So they won. They lost 8, but then they won the SEC tournament. So yeah, they lost in Sweet
Wins are
16, but that
forgiven.
yeah, a lot of it is right. Yeah, and that was a fun. I mean, when Gabriel hit 7 threes, they had that game against Admiral Schofield in Tennessee. That was just an intense SEC championship game. That was honestly that was the best like SEC tournament with the
Yeah.
Cal era. Like the fact that they had no business winning that tournament and they did it.
Yeah.
And I think that marked too like 4 years in a row of winning. So like that was really impressive. But the chances of winning it this year, I mean, I would. It just depends too. Are we going to play on Thursday or are we going to play on Friday? Like, we'll avoid Wednesday, but like winning 4 games in 4 days is really hard to do. So I'll assume that they get a top 4 seed. And I'll say they'll play on Friday, and I would still put us at like 40% chance of winning it. And then the NCAA tournament is just, and if I'm adding up all those things that they didn't win the SEC tournament, that they finished with like 6 or 7 losses in the SEC, then I got to figure that they're not going to be like a top 4 seed, or they'll probably be below that. So yeah, probably not great. But I we still have so much to see from this team. And again, there's how many losses? 6. 3 of them
Yeah,
have been without DJ.
Yeah.
3 have been without DJ, and I guess 3 have been on the road. Is that right? Or 2 on the road, and then the Champions Classic. So again, you don't have to play any road games in the NCAA tournament. The SEC tournament should be closer to a home game, and you should hopefully get DJ back. And at some point, we are going to play with a full roster, right? We at some point
I've said that for a couple weeks now.
64 straight SEC regular season games, 64 without or with somebody missing, with a key player missing.
That's
64.
insane.
That'll be for the
insane
Vanderbilt game. Yeah, we're the only. It's the only team that's going through this. We're the only. And when you go and I went to Sports Reference before I came on here, and I went through all of the SEC teams. Everybody games played. It's, I mean, standard deviation of like 1. Like for, I mean, it's just like they played 32 games. Oh, look, 32, 32, 31, 30, 32, 32, 32. And then you look at Kentucky's every year. It's just like, what is going on? Like, what at some point, like, you got to look at like, how are we conditioning these guys, and what's our protocols for when they get hurt? Because I've heard DJ, I'm sorry, I'm getting way off on a tangent, but we got to get DJ Wagner back. And I heard today, this is before the Vanderbilt game, DJ's ankle is swollen up. He should never have came back. They said he said he came back too fast. Well, he got hurt. He had to sit out in the UNCW game. Why did we rush him back for the Pennsylvania game?
And then the Illinois State and Louisville,
yeah, just, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And you're like, oh, well, and then Trey Mitchell has got a back problem because he's playing too much. But at the same time, there's a lot of guys that are playing 34 minutes a game for other schools, and it's just injuries happen. I'm not saying that like there's like, gosh, man, like at some point though, it's like when you're this much of an outlier, when like, other teams aren't experiencing the amount of injuries or the amount of players who are like Severe Wheeler missed all of last year. They really could have used him in the Kansas State game. Like, do you look at this like, hey, what's going on? Like, why is it that we're dealing with injuries more? I mean, I'll tell you where the 2019 season fell apart when Reed Travis got hurt.
Yeah.
Like, they were the number 1 team in the country. And then he goes down. And then if you remember, PJ got hurt, and we were like, he had to sit out 2 tournament games. They almost lost to Wofford without PJ.
Seen a lot of highlights of that going around today, actually. That
Wofford game?
Yeah.
Really?
I have just oddly enough, I saw a lot of those highlights. So
yes, they can make a run. Is actually to answer your question. I know I really got around to say yes. They can make a run. As we said, the last 5 NCAA tournament games, they've had a lead in the last 4 minutes. So just flip those. Give us 5 back. How about that? We lost all 5 of those. Now let's get 5 of those games to where we win, and then you're in the national championship game.
That works with me. I'm good with that. But it's interesting that you said that you heard that, DJ was maybe in worse shape than we realized, because, and I'm sure your sources are better than Twitter, but it was at least reported online today that, the goal was for DJ to not play tonight. Trey, we'll see how it goes. But both should be ready to go for Gonzaga. Do you feel that is possible, or that we might be in a little bit of a pickle with DJ?
We might. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I it's far because if he doesn't play against Gonzaga, here's the real issue, right? Is that like, I'm not saying we have to see a copy of his MRI. I'm not saying that I need like undeniable proof, but I'll say Bruiser Flint in the press conference before this game said Trey had some back soreness, and now he's going to likely sit out this Vanderbilt game. Why did you phrase it like that? Like, why not just tell us he's hurt? I understand when Mark Stoops doesn't want to tell us about his quarterback being hurt. I get it, because there's a little bit of gamesmanship there, because you say that he has a hurt shoulder, maybe somebody takes a shot at his shoulder in a
Right.
game. That doesn't happen in basketball. Like it just there's not very many free opportunities to lay a hit on somebody that you could further injure them. So there's really no if you're talking about game planning, I mean, how much well, we don't want to let them know if Trey Mitchell's going to play or not. Like, all right, that's whatever. But at the same time, like, how much of an adjustment? I mean, how much of an adjustment do you guys make in your scouting and in your preparation from a player being injured the day of? Like,
Who may
I
be
think the
your fourth leading scorer, fifth leading scorer, whatever he is.
yes, yeah.
If Antonio
So I
Reeves
mean,
is hurt, maybe you keep that close to the chest. But Trey Mitchell, while I do think he's extremely important to the team, is not someone you base a game plan on.
if that's the reason for being opaque with the fans, it's kind of a weak way to do it. But and again, I'm not saying like these like he Trey looked hurt. Adu looked hurt. All the stuff that was going on Friday, I watched DJ on the bench. He wasn't putting on a show. He was very reaction like the loose ball foul, and he gets like he's reacting like a fan would react. He's totally locked in,
Right.
wants the team to win. So
Yeah, I thought that whole thing online was not only not fair to DJ, but just it goes against everything with his character, his mindset. If there is a dog on this team, it's likely
yeah,
DJ.
yeah.
So yeah, that whole situation was kind of blown out of proportion.
And I
So
think
all
that's
in
where like
all,
as the sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good.
I can get
I
I
was
get,
just
I
going to
get a little
ask,
fired
all in
up.
all, what's your yeah, what's your expectation? What is your realistic expectation for how far can this team realistically make it into March, given what
Um,
we know today?
I think they can. I mean, gosh, this is gonna sound. I think they can win the national championship. I mean, that's not my expectation, but that is my like. Could they? Yeah. I mean, like this team in their first test against Kansas, like took them right down to the wire. I mean, UConn looks like they're going to be the team to beat. So maybe they're the favorites. But as we know, like I thought Duke would run away with that title in 2019. Another little Coach K dig here. How the hell do you lose with that group? Oh my! How do you not make the Final Four with
Right.
that group?
Yeah, I don't
That's
know.
terrible. And not only not make they should have gotten beat by UCF. They won 2 of their 3 wins in that tournament by a combined 4 points. Anyway, I digress. This team could. I want to see the second weekend. I mean, if this group can't get you there, I don't even care what seed you are. Like, it would be
They have
nice
to.
not to be an 8 or a 9 or 7 or 7 to not have to face a 1 or 2, but this team's good, man. Like they're good. They're not good on they're terrible on defense, but this team is good enough to get to the second weekend. There's too many stars. I mean, come on. There's like 6 NBA players right now, and there's probably more than that, honestly.
I'm with you. I think best case scenario, we figure out defense, we play with a full roster. Sure, this team has the potential. People are putting North Carolina not long ago, us in the Final Four, realm talk category, whatever you want to call it. But I think minimum we have to make the Sweet 16. But personally, I kind of think that's where we crap out, especially with the seed line we're getting. There's a huge difference between a 3 seed and a 4 seed in who you play in the Sweet 16. Instead of running into a 1 seeded UConn, Purdue, Kansas, whoever it may be, you get that 2 seed, and 2 seeds are beatable.
Yes.
So,
Yes, they are.
and I hope I'm wrong. I just kind of think this team craps out in the Sweet 16 after playing probably two close for comfort first round games. And, I think that's kind of where it puts us. And then where does the fan base go from there? Are we saying, well, we got a Sweet 16 again, or it's better than we've been since 2019?
Yeah, I think if you were to couple a Sweet 16 with not winning the SEC regular season, not winning the SEC tournament, then that's going to make for that situation we called for earlier, where it's just like, okay, that's fine. We can get the players. We get the players. We got the number 1 recruiting class, and we couldn't do anything that Kentucky should do or that Kentucky fans expect. And I said those three things: SEC regular season, SEC tournament, NCAA. And it's not win the national title. It is like regional championships are pretty awesome too. We'll hang a banner for that. Or give us the opportunity. When you get to that Elite Eight, as we said, it's a crapshoot. So get me there. Anything shy of that is like, okay, we didn't do anything this year. What
Right.
is it that we get to do we hang a banner because we beat North Carolina
Yeah.
in
It was a fun team
Atlanta?
to watch.
Yeah, scored a lot of points. Like put that up, hang that in the rafters. But yeah, like that's I don't that I don't know. I don't even want to. I don't even like thinking about it because it's again. There's just all this. Like I don't think that this will be Cal's last season, no matter what. So I do think it just makes it just is mounting pressure on the next group of 18-year-olds.
It
And
does.
it's like
It compiles every year, and each year it goes bad. It gets worse for the fans. It gets worse for Cal, the program, the players who haven't had a say in the past few years. But hopefully, in a month and a half, we look back and this was all for naught, and we were worrying about nothing.
yes.
And we went a little long today, and I appreciate you being patient. I want to switch gears here at the end, and just real quick, I can get your take on the Liam Cohen situation. Uh, a subject that is very funny to me. Uh, he clearly wanted out. There was no doubt about it. I think it was clear to see for the past 6 weeks he wasn't dialed in here. He wanted out, and now with the rehire of Eric Wolford at the O line coach, Stoops has trusted two coaches to come back after leaving him, and he's been burned once. So where are you on that situation?
Man, it just sucks. The timing is the worst thing. Now, luckily, like it sounds like we're not going to lose a bunch of guys, but man, you think about like Barry and Brown, Denke, they got to learn a third playbook in 3 years. Like, and I know, I like you're constantly adding, you're adjusting, you're doing different stuff to it. It's not like a set thing, but it is like, damn, like, who's our coach this year? Like, we stayed at the
Yeah,
same school. Am I going to have three different coaches? This is, and it's, I don't know. There's all that stuff. Does Mark Stoops have too much say in the offense and all this? And there's complementary football that they're trying to play. The strategy has always been like, we're gonna run the ball and we're gonna watch that clock tick down, and we're gonna shorten this game because, I mean, how else are we gonna compete with Alabama? We can't we can't go 3-and-out and just like have on three passes and have no time go off the clock. Like we'll be down, we could be down 21-0. Oh wait, never mind. Okay, so but I guess like I don't know if that happened, but I could see it. I mean, because that's kind of been our strategy since Mark has been here, and actually, it's the best strategy that a coach has had. Really, I mean, the air raid was fun, but like it was never going to let you go 10-3 in the SEC. Like we were just we could beat some of the teams that are near our level, but we were never going to really punch above our weight and take down somebody. Even with Rich Brooks, like it was kind of a similar, right? I mean, we were there. That team scored a lot of points, but man, I remember Nick Saban. I'm a Dolphins fan, and I remember like him promising the Dolphin fans and the Dolphins, front office, I'm not leaving, and Alabama trying to get him. He's like, I'm not. And these coaches lie, like all of them lie. I mean, coach speak is just like, oh, he's lying to us. That's what that is. Like that's not. And sometimes you have to, and you got to protect the players and in college, you're talking about 18, 22-year-olds. So it's probably the right thing to do. In some cases, it's just like, all right, y'all are just straight up lying.
yeah,
And that's what's like, okay, good job, Tampa Bay. You got this guy. I mean, do you take his word for it? Do you take his word for anything? Like you just watched him publicly lie to an entire state.
yeah. And for me, my first season buying season tickets was Liam Cohen's first year. So, what a
Oh, that was
great,
fun.
yeah, what a great time to buy them. But like you mentioned, now we've had 7 OCs under Stoops, and uh, you kind of touched on this, but is it an indictment on Stoops himself? Because at some point it has to be, I guess. I
Hmm.
give Stoops probably 30-ish% of the blame. Obviously, Cohen broke his word, was very clearly wanting out, all of that stuff. But I do think that Stoops needs to step up to the plate and say, hey, maybe. And then right before he leaves, he comes out and we're eye to eye. We see 100% on everything. And what retrospectively kind of looks like a plea or, we're
Yeah,
good.
that's a
Don't
good point.
leave.
That's a good
We're
point.
good. Yeah.
That's exactly what that was. I didn't think about it, but you're right. You're right. I think though, and when you look at like 7 and 11 years, and this will be like the fifth search or something like, or the fifth, I don't know, whatever number we're on. Eddie Graham would probably still be the offense coordinator if he wanted it. I mean, and I'm sorry, if they wanted him to be. But of course, they wanted to make a change. And is that when they brought in Liam? Was it that
Yeah. It was
year?
right after Eddie.
Okay. So, and I think Eddie was from 20, at least 2018 to 20 through the 2020 season, maybe before that. So like he would probably still be doing that job if Mark Stoops wanted him to. But I think to Mark Stoops' credit, I think he noticed that like there was some deficiencies on offense. That 2018 defense was a legit top 5 defense.
Oh, yeah.
If
Easily.
that team was this close to being A&M, and they should have beaten Tennessee.
Yep.
They What I'm saying is they should have been 11-1. They should have been in the playoffs. I mean, they should have been in Atlanta. Well, they had to beat Georgia, but you know what I'm saying. Maybe not been in the playoffs, but that was a top 5 defense, and we just couldn't pair it. The offense was terrible for the most part. Like even the touchdowns they scored, like against A&M, I think one touchdown was a scoop and score, and one was like they hit. Uh, uh, anyway, I can't go through all the plays, but I know it's like there's a dump off, and the guy just took it. Lynn Bowden took it like 50 yards, right? So like their offense was bad, and so I think like Stoops looked back on those couple. He's like, okay, we got to get a new guy in, and Liam was like a home run. I mean, right out of the gate, and quarterbacks wanted to come play for him. I understand why you'd bring him back. I mean, it got you the number 1 transfer quarterback last year. So, and he just didn't pan out. And so I don't know. I mean, it is a little bit of an indictment on Stoops, but I think like you saw, he wanted to change up his offense. How much freedom did he allow him? I don't know, but I do think that like even when I felt like they were opening up the playbook and allowing Devin to throw, I mean, he was throwing incomplete passes.
Yeah.
So what are you supposed to? I mean, if guys aren't catching the ball, and then when then you're not putting it where they can catch it, then we're going 3 and out, and we're giving the other team back the ball. We're not taking any time off the clock, and maybe they're giving them the ball in good field position. So then it becomes like, all right, well, if we're not going to completing passes, Liam, we got to put the ball on the ground, or we got to do something we got to manage the clock, because it's just, I mean, the offense should have been better last year. And I don't know if Liam, like how much of the blame, like I want to put on him, or how much of it is just like on guys not making plays. That's what makes it so tough, isn't it? Like we talk basketball and football, like if
Where does
Wandell
the
can
blame go
catch a
for
pass,
any of it? I think there's blame, like you mentioned, for the players not catching the passes, Leary not putting it where it needs to be. And then I think where Cohen benefits is he has a proven scheme that worked with Levis to turn around and run the slowest offense in college football. So was that, where does that blame go? And we'll never know the right answer to that, or at least the correct answer.
Oh, I think if you want to know my opinion, do you want to know my opinion? It's Stoops. Absolutely. I mean, that's and I'm not saying that to like hate on him. I just think like our offense is just not, we're not moving the ball. Like, we got, we're not catching the ball. We're not being able to extend these drives. So part of it is like his strategy has been like shortening the game and taking being slow to the line of scrimmage, like running that play clock all the way down to 2 or 3 before you snap it, because we're again, like I was a great thing they beat Louisville because that
would have been
it took a lot of pressure off. I think it took a lot of heat off. It's amazing what football with one win can do for an entire program. Like, I mean,
Kentucky sports as a whole is in a weird spot right now. We have probably the greatest football coach we've ever had, first or second greatest basketball coach we ever had, and fans are, at least a portion of the fans are ready to run both of them out of town. Um, so
It is weird. It is.
for right or
It's weird.
wrong, Kentucky's both in a great spot and a tricky one. With basketball, we'll have to see how this year ends, and then I think Stoops is in a similar situation next year. But overall, Stephen, I appreciate you coming on and talking with us, taking double the time that I said we would take today.
I can
So
do
I
this
do
all day.
appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I'll keep checking out your channel, and I love your opinions. I really do, and I hope like I want to bring you on something that I'll do soon. I really enjoy. I know when people are like truly fans, like,
Right.
and it's. I want to say that like it's just a game. Like, why are we being so serious? This is just a game. It's just sports, but it's not. And I always hated it when I was younger when people would tell me that it's just a game,
Yes.
because it's not. This is something that, especially as Kentuckians, like, I don't know how you feel, but I know, like, you know, I get tired of the way the rest of the country looks down upon us sometimes. And we have so many great qualities in the state, but the one thing that we always got to do with pride is be like, we're going to beat your ass in basketball. Like,
Absolutely.
we get to do that. And we play when our state, because it doesn't say the University of Kentucky on that jersey. I mean, I know it's the UK's in the logo, but like, it's Kentucky, and it
Yep.
represents all of us who are bought in as Kentucky fans. And we wear blue. And whenever I go out of town, I wear Kentucky stuff all the time. I want people to know where I'm from and what team I support. And it is more than just a game. Like, it's bigger than life itself. There's nothing that I have loved since I was 6 years old, other than this. If you, and
Right.
I tell that to my girlfriend, who thinks that I'm absolutely insane when I watch the games. But like, what is something else that you cared about since you were 6 years old? And if it's just a game, why does it hurt so much when they lose? And why do I feel on top of the world when they win? And that's what makes it so weird for us as Kentucky fans right now. Because you're right, we have the best football coach, best basketball coach we've ever had, or not ever had, but two of the best that we've ever had in both sports. And we're still in this weird place. We're like, do we want this to continue? Which is so weird. It's just because it means so much to us. But
Right. And
I
I
really
made I
appreciate
made
you.
the video making that exact point. I don't know, maybe last year over the summer or something about
Hmm.
why Kentucky is different. And it just is, like you said, this is the one thing that we have to be proud of in the state. It's been made, Kentucky's the hillbillies, they're the bottom three
Yeah.
states of every category you look at,
Hmm.
but we're kicking your ass when it comes to basketball. And when
Yeah.
we don't have that, I think the state just hurts.
Yeah, they're hurting. The whole state is hurting right now. This is a weird spot because if you go back and look at when Kentucky was bad at basketball, they were having like really good football seasons to kind of
Mhm.
like counter that a little bit. And we're not. We're kind of both just like, it's not terrible, but it's not like so. But I know this: Kentucky has had 5 coaches win a national championship, and
Yep.
they were good before me. They've been good my whole life for the most part, and they're going to be good when I'm gone. Kentucky basketball will be great again. We're going to be Kentucky good again, and it doesn't matter who the coach is. If it's Calipari, if it's Nate Oates, if it's Sean Smith, like, that's my first, like, get Sean Smith the job. But
Let's do it. Him,
they'll be
Jack
good.
Pilgrim is the assistant.
Yes,
Absolutely. Well, Stephen, of course, like thanks for coming on again, man. If you know how to contact me if you ever need me for anything. I'll be more than happy to do whatever. But just let me know. And again, I appreciate your time. We went well over what I said we were going to go over. So this is the busy time of year for you. It's only going to get crazier. And I wish you nothing but the best. And we'll talk again soon. Thanks, man.
awesome. Thanks.
Thank you guys for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about the conversation and did you like this style video? If you did, we'll be sure to do more of them, bring some new people on and bring Steven back. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next week. Go Cats.